Welcome into another edition of the Commitment Issues Podcast. I'm Woody Womack, joined by Rob Cassidy from Miami, Florida. Rob, how's it going today?
It is going, man. It's another week, another wonderful week during college football season. So, that's better than the alternative of no college football.
Yeah, I'm loving college football. And I know one man who was in the dark all weekend of college football, Nick Kruger, joining us from Texas.
Hey, Nick. What's up?
All you need to know is that Texas is definitely back, and they're never going to lose another game again. And Rob Cassidy was possibly right when he said maybe we were getting a little ahead of ourselves when it came to the Longhorns.
I was watching. I watched the start of that game. I was in a nice Italian restaurant in Houston, Texas, the great city of. And the game was on at television. We were the only people in there, and of course my wife hates it when we're out at a restaurant and there's a TV on, especially if it's on football. She's had enough of football, and we're watching the game. Texas is out to like a 17-3 lead. I'm like, oh man, this is great because Cal's coming in trying to recruit Texas. This is really just a knife twist scenario for the Longhorns. Get home the next morning, come to find out what happened.
Well, guess what? The whole Big 12 stinks.
We crowned them as Big 12 champions 2 weeks ago. I mean, the whole world did, right?
Okay, well, let's get right into the old top 5 topics this week. Number 1, we want to talk about Oklahoma and Notre Dame specifically, as the two of them both lost again this weekend. Oklahoma, we'll start with them since we're already talking about them. They had a ton of big visitors in. Obviously, I think several 5-star, several top 100 players were there. And boy, their message board over at Soonerscoop.com was a real meltdown situation. People wanting Bob Stoops fired. It was really crazy. So I guess we should sort of, Nick, we can start with you. What did you think the reaction from the recruits down there? I saw Marvin Wilson give an interview with our Ohio State site talking about how impressed he was with them. And obviously, if you're Oklahoma, having Marvin Wilson in, one of the top defensive tackles in the country, you don't want him talking about how good the other team looked. So do you think this is a bad situation for them, or, is it just a loss that they can get over?
Yeah, if you're a Sooners fan, that's not the reaction that you wanted to hear, kind of insult to injury following the result. And honestly, Marvin Wilson isn't the only guy there that they had to worry about impressing. Jeffrey Okudah, who's probably closer to a decision between Oklahoma and Ohio State than Marvin Wilson is at this point, was also on hand and had a chance to see that game. And really, when you're talking about a guy who's probably closer to making a decision between fewer schools than Marvin Wilson is at this point, a game like that, can only help Ohio State's case and might be one of those little things that kind of tips the scales a little bit more in their favor. So it was a little disappointing not only to see Marvin's reaction, but to assume that Jeffrey had kind of a similar takeaway from that. And all these recruits talk to each other about things, and they'll all probably be kind of comparing and contrasting the notes and takeaways that they had from their visits. As far as the guys that were on hand that are already committed to Oklahoma go, I don't think there's any reason to be concerned there. I think the feeling is that group of guys all committed early enough in the process, and Oklahoma was able to put together such a big group of top-ranked committed guys ahead of the season, that they all started, kind of drinking their own Kool-Aid a little bit and thinking that regardless of what happens this season, regardless of what happens next season, this is a group of players that's going to come in and be difference makers as a unit, at some point once they all get onto the field. And I think it would really take a lot, to kind of sway that notion from that group collectively. And so I think, as far as those guys are concerned, there's not a whole lot to be worried about. And I think our good friend Josh McQuistion did a great job of kind of following up with a lot of these kids and, getting that info too from the guys that were there on the visit.
Hot take, Oklahoma is still going to win the Big 12. I don't know that makes anything that's happened to this point irrelevant, but I think that if they do win the Big 12, which we've already discussed is a very down league right now, and I think that they will, maybe the bigger picture trumps the smaller picture, and kids that are looking down the stretch see them as Big 12 champions and not as the team that lost to Ohio State pretty badly.
Well, I think of what times a lot of fans don't realize is that several of these kids are have a pretty good idea of where they're going at this point, and a single game's results is not going to make that happen. Now, if they win 6 games or something, sure, but there was a few players there that I know, said they had a good time. I talked to Tyler Taylor, the linebacker. I talked to Jacob Phillips, who was there last week. he's not saying, okay, Oklahoma lost. Now I'm not going to Oklahoma. Everything that I've liked about them before is now over. I mean, these kids all lose several games. These are the best players in the country, and they lose several games in high school. So I think, I definitely don't think Bob Stoops is getting fired. I think they were in a college football playoff last year. I think it's a little easy to freak out from that perspective. But yeah, I'm with you guys. If they go on and do what they need to do in conference, it'll be fine. Switching to Notre Dame, boy, they also had a lot of big visitors in, including the aforementioned Phillips. They go out and really fall way behind. They try to make a comeback. It's too little, too late. But then yesterday they pick up a 4-star defensive lineman in Donovan Jeter. So that even further proves the point that, guess what? He didn't care that they lost that game. And a lot of coaches end up spinning these losses to, hey, look, we need you. Look how bad we need you. I've had several kids tell me that when they go to some place and there's a loss, they say, oh, look, it just proves, they need me in the mix. So,
and there's some of these stories that are written every week. How does this game affect recruiting? And the answer is not at all, usually. Like, one game in a vacuum, no matter what happens, is not, unless it's a head-to-head game between the two teams that the kid is considering, and the only thing that matters to him is who wins that game, and I can't imagine that is something that takes place very often. It doesn't. One game in a vacuum has no effect on recruiting. I think that's one of the biggest misnomers there is when it comes to recruiting. Now, the grand scope of the season, and if your coaching situation is stable, affects recruiting incredibly. But, the result of one single game isn't going to, like you said, isn't going to burn the retinas of some recruit that happened to be in the stands, especially when it's a game at Oklahoma at night where the atmosphere was the way it was. Sure, they lost the game, but, if you don't think that everything else that happened around that game and the fact that it was even being played and the enthusiasm that surrounded it also had an effect on those recruits, you can't just ignore that. Then you're crazy.
Yeah, so obviously it's tough for especially for recruiting. The fans are fanatics for a reason, so it's easy for people to freak out. But I think obviously that everything should right itself in those two situations, especially with the way that the schedule breaks coming up. So yeah, I'm with you guys in terms of the freak out mode. One team that I think their fans are freaking out, and I am starting to get some recruits maybe freaking out a little bit as well. That's LSU. I mean, it's interesting to see what's happened there as things have shaken out. They now have Danny Etling as their quarterback, and they look better. But they squeaked out one against Mississippi State 23-20 as they made a late charge. And the question is, there was an article in one of the local newspapers down there in Louisiana kind of going over their quarterback recruiting, and over the past 16 quarterbacks they brought in, only 3 have finished school there and actually graduated and not transferred to gone somewhere else. So I kind of wanted to talk with you guys about what's going on. I mean, it seems like whenever they have success, they have a pro-style quarterback, but they go out and recruit some of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in the country, and then they don't end up working out, and then they end up right back where they were. So is it an offensive problem? Is it a recruiting strategy problem? Have you guys noticed this? Rob, what do you think on that situation with the Tigers?
No, I mean, it's definitely a thing that exists. I mean, at this point, it's a trend. It's not like, 1 or 2 off, oh, here's a coincidence. The explanation for that trend is a little bit more complicated, I think. I'm not sure that I have an answer for that. You would think, you don't want to pawn it off on quarterback development. But at this point, I mean, it's not like they're going out and getting cast-offs, right? And it's not like that we could have, and services like ours could have overrated this many quarterbacks at this point, right? So you got to meet in the middle. It's probably a little bit of not recruiting for their style, a little bit of us maybe overranking a prospect or two, and a little bit of Les Miles' staff not being able to develop guys that have talent. It's never one thing, there's always, it's never one extreme almost in any circumstance. There's probably some mix of those 3 factors. And I don't know where you would plot that on a graph, but that would be at least my measured take, is that it's some blend of those 3 situations.
I think, anytime that we talk to other recruits that are considering LSU, and you ask them about, what they think about the program, what they know about the offense, what they're looking forward to once they get out there, the one constant is always, they know they can count on a strong running game, and it's and it's obvious because they have, Leonard Fournette, they have Darius Geis waiting in the wings, they have, they've had other guys the past couple of seasons. But when you look at the recruits that they have in the fold, I mean, I don't think any of the three of us are particularly high on Lowell Narcisse's prospects as a quarterback coming in out of this class. I thought Miles Brennan really showed well for himself at the opening, and if he is as good as he looked on on television during that week, comes in and plays a little bit better than where we currently have him ranked, and you would think with the offensive coordinator there like Cam Cameron, who's supposed to be a passing guru, that the stars would sort of align at some point and they could get it figured out, but. It's really been a rough road for him. Well, I was going to say bumpy, and then I was going to say rough, and then I said rumpy.
Rumpy. Speaking of great college football quarterbacks, at 11:48 as we record this right now, Eastern Time, Mr. Tim Tebow has hit his first home run as a Met.
Wow!
In the instructional league. Yeah, how about that? Over the right field fence.
Boy, has he prayed at every base around, making the rounds? Or
I can only imagine. I cannot wait to see the post game.
All right,
let's just promote him. All right, sorry.
So if we look at the past 3 years, what they've been able to do at quarterback, they took Brandon Harris, who we ranked as a 4-star, and I liked him a lot when he was in high school. Saw him at the Under Armour game that year. That was in 2014. Then in 2015, they take one quarterback. It's a 2-star in Justin McMillan, which, I don't think exactly. He's from Cedar Hill, Nick's neck of the woods, but wasn't exactly, highly recruited, I would say, as he had an offer from UNLV and Arkansas State and Stephen F. Austin. And of course, we got hammered for that one, for him being ranked too low. And then last year, they ended up taking Lindsey Scott, who was a quarterback for the world famous Bootleggers. But, he was a guy being pursued by schools like Oregon State and Army. So, I mean, that's why Danny Etling's there. Things have kind of fallen apart. I think resetting things and getting a guy like Brennan's the right way to go if they're going to keep running this offense. I can't speak to Dunkelman. Is that his name? Dinkelman. Zach
all-time great football names.
It just rolls off the tongue. 2018 quarterback who's committed there. I think he's more of a pro-style guy as well. But, and then Narcisse, as we mentioned, who just suffered his second ACL tear in as many years. It's going to be a tough situation. I'm interested to see if Cameron can survive the year and if he can turn things around. Tennessee made some news this weekend when they picked up a commitment from 4-star DB Terrell Bailey out of Louisiana, and a lot of the Vol fans were angry. We have him ranked as a 4-star. He comes from a program there in John Ehret where they have produced some pretty good talent. A friend of the show, Don Cox, worked there for several years as well, coaching the DBs. But the Vols fans did not seem thrilled because this was a guy that LSU hadn't offered. We have him ranked a lot higher than others because the three of us actually saw him at the camp in New Orleans. My question is, what's kind of going on with Tennessee and their in-state recruiting? Are they, do you think it's a problem where some of these programs think the grass is greener on the other side because they've taken several 3-stars from out of state and then overlooked some guys in state? Do you guys think that's, Nick? I guess we'll start with you. Do you think it's a problem where teams are maybe, looking across state borders when they do have talent in their own backyard?
You should be answering this yourself. You're the one that's
I know I should
answer this question.
Well, let's look at Tennessee's recruiting class. I mean, we got Louisiana, Virginia. They got 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. They got 6 kids in their class from Tennessee committed, and they have a huge commitment list right now. One of them's a kicker, and I'm just sort of confused, man. I mean, I definitely think it's good to go out of state and nab 4-star guys. They got Rob really likes defensive tackle Kyvon Bennett from down there in Fort Lauderdale, and they got a 4-star from Virginia. But I mean, I worry about some of these guys that are on the bottom 5, 3-stars coming from South Carolina, coming from Georgia, coming from Louisiana, or even Connecticut. When you got highly ranked players, I think personally, as I was working on the state rankings yesterday, if we're talking depth of talent, I think Tennessee has more talent than Louisiana. They produce more Division I players, and so they have over the past few years at least. And we see guys like Ugo Amadi, who's someone we really enjoyed out at Oregon, playing and starting for them, and Kareem Moore, who's a DB from the state of Tennessee, starting for Arizona State. He was in the All-American mix last year as a true freshman. So I don't know. I mean,
are we talking about guys that Tennessee has passed on and not offered and not pursued, or guys that are choosing to go elsewhere despite having Tennessee?
Well, it's really a gamble for them, right? Because if they say, listen, you have to play the numbers game with the number of offers that you put out to kids and how many, what percentage you think of kids that you think you actually have.
Unless you're Louisville, and then you can offer.
Well, right, or Kansas or whoever, okay. Fill in the blank. But for Tennessee, who's a bigger program that has to weigh that out a little bit more earnestly. I mean, and it's tougher for them too, especially when you pin so much of your hopes for the following seasons based on kids from out of state that you don't have a chance to see on a regular basis like you do kids in state. Your communication is different with those kids, and then you have to fight off all the other in-state schools. Like, they've been relatively proactive in Texas. There's so many schools in Texas that they're choosing to compete with, not to mention all the other SEC schools that they have to compete with too. I mean, it's really, you're really setting yourself up for an uphill battle when you go about that strategy like that.
Look, man, unless you're passing on these kids, if you're Tennessee, you are in a state with Vanderbilt. Look, man, I'm not gonna poo-poo on Vanderbilt here as a university or an institution, because obviously not. But my word, this is a team that can't get anything done, right? If you cannot recruit head-to-head against Vanderbilt for the most part, especially with your academic restrictions and all that going on there, on top of not being able to actually win football games, if you're choosing not to go head-to-head with Vanderbilt for whatever reason, I mean, you'd think there'd be a player or two. For all intent, you should be able to get. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're Tennessee, you should be able to have your pick of the litter of in-state kids, and there should be no excuse for a guy escaping the state and then becoming a star elsewhere, right?
Well, right. Well, we're talking about Jacoby Stevens slipped out. He's committed to LSU. He's the top player in the state. That's okay. But you have a guy in T. Higgins who's right there in their backyard. He's committed to Clemson. You have Amari Rogers, who is the son of T. Martin, who, was a famous quarterback there, obviously, won a national championship. He's going to Clemson. And then, you have several other players going to Mississippi State and schools like that. Now, my question is, like you said, why, I don't think they missed on all those. The first three guys that they missed on, sure, but some of these other guys, I think they may have, maybe misevaluated early. Look at Jacob Phillips. I mean, Alabama's willing to take his commitment as a linebacker, and he was told by Tennessee early on that he didn't have the speed, he was too stiff, and then he's getting recruited by Oregon, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, LSU, and now Tennessee wanted to get back in the mix, but it's a little too late. So I don't know. I think it's I think it's really a tough situation. I just think sometimes, and I think schools like Georgia are guilty of this too. You kind of take the kids for granted that are right there in your backyard. I just, I think it's sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. And, we look at Tennessee's team, which is, a top 25 team. I'm not sure exactly where they're ranked. And their best players are Tennessee kids, Jalen Hurd, Josh Malone, Jalen Reeves-Maben. Those are all guys from that Nashville area that they recruited and they kind of built the team around. So I think it's going to be key for them to get back to that because, this year's class, while there's a lot of commits, they're ninth in the nation right now. I think by the time things shake out, and unless some of these guys really move up in the rankings, they'll probably be, in the 15 or lower range unless they get some, big-time guys in here soon. So now this will go over, this podcast is going to go over real well on the Tennessee board, by the way.
Sure. Well, I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, those people want to burn your house down anyway, right? So at this point, how much worse can it get for you? It's people like Kruger and I that need to run and duck for cover because now they're going to expand their scope to include our houses.
Well, they love to take things that you or Friedman or Farrell say and attribute them to me. So this will just pretend it was three of me talking to myself. But I think Tennessee's on the right track. I'm just saying I think maybe it's time for a recalibration when it comes to overlooking some of these in-state guys. That's all.
I'll tell you what. If they don't beat Florida, there's going to be a recalibration. I'm sure, just in a much different way.
All right, let's move on. We saw this weekend Oregon went into Nebraska. They get the win there. I saw it billed as an upset, even though the three of us know that Nebraska was the favorite going into that game. So it was a big win. There were several big visitors there. We hear a lot, this kind of a niche recruiting thing that a lot of people might not know about, but Nebraska's recruiting in California, especially in the Calabasas area, home of the Kardashians, recruiting that area very hard, working with Keyshawn Johnson Sr. They got his son, heavily in the mix there as well, a bunch of other highly ranked players. They call it the Calabrasca movement. Does this win over a big Pac-12 team, you think, give them more momentum there? I know Mike Farrell wrote about it today. Do we really see these kids highly ranked kids going from California to Nebraska and overlooking, the USCs, UCLAs, Oregon, et cetera?
You have to forgive me. I don't know how, because I'm not out there in the Pac-12 region. Obviously, I concern myself with the people in the Southeast. I need to look at how many of these kids have offers from, the UCLAs and USCs of the world that are deciding to forego California and go to Nebraska. I know they're pretty big time prospects. I just wonder how many of them are actually turning their nose up and how many aren't. And either way, it's an impressive run from Nebraska being able to do this because they are snubbing other West Coast schools, no matter who those West Coast schools tend to be. And I think this probably plays into that. Like I said, this result in a vacuum doesn't mean much, but because they already have this pipeline that's been a little bit publicized, and then they get that win over Oregon. I think that plays in, kind of to the whole narrative now. So yeah, I think it probably helps build a little bit of momentum. I don't think it's going to be, world shaking, but it every little bit helps.
Yeah, right now they got two commits. They got Keyshawn Johnson Jr., who, I would say the jury's still out on his upside from the perspective of the three of us on this call. And then Tristan Gebbia, I believe it's pronounced, the quarterback, also from Calabasas. The guy's ranked pretty high. I know Ole Miss thought they were going to get him at one point. I think he's has ties to the school there. Instead he picks Nebraska, and they actually are doing a pretty good job of recruiting nationally. Some other places. Those are the only two California commits, but several big targets. Darnay Holmes and guys like that. I don't know. I don't think
they're getting him, right? Like, I mean, if they get him, that's a giant victory. That's a victory over USC and UCLA. I don't think they're getting him, but hey, you never know.
Well, some of the things just have to fall into place, and it's looking like obviously USC is having all sorts of problems out there. They're switching quarterbacks. I don't think Clay Helton is long for this world. I think it's time for USC to stop spinning off the same assistant coaches they've been doing it for a decade, and they have not been good the entire time. So at what point do they realize we're going to have to go outside of the Pete Carroll tree to do something? But I think they're going to be bad, and if they don't fire Helton this year, I think it's going to hurt their class. UCLA is fine, but that they're never great for some reason. They have done a good job recruiting. But Oregon looks to be on the downside of their big run as a national power. I think those days are pretty much over. So they could do it, but it's going to be tough. And I think you got to get these kids out to Nebraska on official visits ASAP because, once it starts snowing and getting cold, we all know how the kids from the Southeast react when they go up on those visits and they see snow and they're freezing. So I think Nebraska would be wise to strike while the iron's hot in terms of getting those guys out there.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for those Nebraska official visits. I've been on that stadium on a number of occasions, and it really is a really cool atmosphere. Like, they make we all like to kind of mock Nebraska for, the pride and, we sell out spring games and all this. But if you're an official visitor on that field and that stadium is full, 30 minutes before the game, every game, no matter if they're playing, Michigan or FAU, it's pretty impressive to see. And I think, that's why they need to get these guys, besides get them on campus early to avoid the cold, is to get them in that stadium and really sell what you do best. And that's fill that stadium and be the only show in town.
Now, yesterday, we'll move on topics. Yesterday was a big reveal, I believe, of some new Miami uniforms, new old uniforms. I guess they're trotting out the old, back from the heyday. I personally, they looked fine, but I wasn't super impressed. I haven't been really impressed with any alternate uniforms this year. I mean, I liked, I don't know what I liked. I hated the LSU ones they wore the other day. I liked the Oregon yellow ones that they wore a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't been impressed with the other ones they wore either. Rob, you wrote this on here talking about, do kids actually care about these uniforms? I mean, we've seen everybody kind of have multiple alternates per year and everything. Now it's kind of there's no real advantage. It used to be, a few schools have several different options. Now everyone's got hundreds of options. So what do you think? I mean, do the kids care that much? I mean, do they care about the old U is back obviously none of them remember or were alive during that time. So
I think this only works for Miami if they have a good season. They should have waited to roll these things out until they were 6-0 or something, right? And then, like I said, it adds to a larger picture. I mean, uniforms, like single game results in a vacuum, don't matter at all. No kid is going to pick a school just because they have nice, fancy throwback uniforms. But if you can use it to advance a narrative, which Miami could have if they would have waited a little bit longer and had they continued to win, and then you're like, okay, not only is the old you that you've heard about back, here's the look on top of it. Then it becomes a whole larger, it becomes the whole larger narrative that people can buy into. I think they're great. I think they're cool looking. Maybe it's nostalgia for me. Maybe I wouldn't care as much if I was a recruit, but I think just looking at them, and I think it's really awesome to have those uniforms back.
No, they're definitely cooler than what they have been wearing. The timing is strange. Just a couple games into the season, you would have thought, like, if you're going to hire Mark Richt and you're going to bring him in as a new coach, and he represents a time gone by of glory days of Miami football, that they would have unveiled the uniforms at the same time that they introduced him as the head coach and really went all in with it. I guess it doesn't matter that much, but that would have seemed like more appropriate timing. Man, I remember when Miami, when they first switched to those uniforms, where they had like, you remember Georgia Tech's uniforms that they've been wearing for the past 10 years, and Miami did them first.
Yeah.
When they first switched to those uniforms, though, I was like, man, that's really cool. Even though they had like the weird pants stripe that just stopped in the middle of nowhere for no reason, and now I'm looking at their uniforms. I'm like, why are they all chopped up with the stripes on the sleeves and the pants, and they got the big clunky logo on the back? So I'm glad they cleaned them up. They look much better to me.
If you're a Miami fan and they wait just a couple more weeks and you've got any confidence at all that you can beat Florida State, let's say they get past Georgia Tech, then they play Florida State and they somehow win that game, because let's be honest, Florida State isn't looking like a juggernaut right now. I mean, they obviously have the athletes and can turn the season on a dime, and then they release the uniform. So you've beaten Florida State now. That game is at Miami. And then those uniforms come out a day after you beat your in-state rival. Then I think that really becomes an avalanche of recruiting momentum. And maybe they should have waited. If I'm making the decisions, I wait.
Whether or not kids, you're right. Nobody's going to believe that a kid will pick a school based on uniforms alone. But we can't pretend like it's not a recruiting tool at some point.
Absolutely.
Regardless, and it's not just the uniforms too. I mean, we've seen the one that comes to mind. I can't remember, a couple seasons ago, ahead of a bowl game, Clemson released a tweet with like all the gear that their players got ahead of their bowl game, all the warm up. It was like 40 pieces of clothing, and they put it out there to show kids like, hey, this is what we're getting with the whole experience or whatever. So and we know from the camp life that kids do care about getting the gear. So the uniforms definitely kind of fall into that family of rationale for sure.
Yeah, we see schools have custom, there's a lot of custom Nikes, there's custom Adidas, or some schools have custom Jordans, and the schools do like that. I mean, I think, Nick's obviously the uniform expert. He pays a lot closer attention to those details than we do. But,
but hey, listen too, and when Michigan switched to the Jumpman uniforms, friend of the podcast, Benjamin, big shout, took a lot of flack on Twitter for saying, hey, I really like these uniforms. Everybody thought that the sky was falling. He was going to flip from Iowa to go to Michigan based on, and he had to come out and clear the air on Twitter and say, hey, listen, just because I give a shout out to a uniform, let's not go all overboard with it, man. Whew.
Well, if you want any Michigan uniform coverage, go back and look at also friend of the podcast, Coach Brandon Brown's Twitter feed, where he was just salivating for weeks over the release of the Jumpman gear. It was really, I had to send him a few text messages, about taking a cold shower. It was bad. It was it was really bad for a while there. So not just kids get excited, reporters get excited too. So I'll tell you someone who was excited. It's our guest this week, Rob. You had a chance to, I guess, not sit down. You might have been sitting down. I don't know, or he was sitting down. But Colorado head football coach Mike MacIntyre joined the show. Talked with Rob about several topics. This was prior to their game against Michigan, where they actually had a really good showing. Waiting for their quarterback getting injured. Who knows? They might have pulled the upset there. So let's jump into that interview. Rob, take it away with Coach Mac.
Joined now by Colorado head coach Mike MacIntyre on the podcast. Mike, thanks for coming on. Apparently off the air, I just learned you're a Miami guy yourself, right?
Yes, sure am. I was born there in Coral Gables at Doctor's Hospital a long time ago.
So right in my neck of the woods. I live, probably walking distance from there. So, that's good to know. Anyway, but now you've got ties to the area. You've taken over at Colorado, which traditionally never really recruited in Florida or did in spots. Did you make it a priority when you got there? Did that happen later? And you guys have really started to do work down in the Southeast.
It happened a little later. I was, I hired Joe Tumpkin, who went to Miami Hialeah Lakes, and then he grew up down there, and he's always recruited down there. And then I hired Jim Levitt, who's recruited down in Florida. And then our other secondary coach, Charles Clark, is from Jacksonville, Florida. And so we have a lot of ties in there. Then, of course, I went to school at Georgia Tech and got my master's at Georgia, so we had a lot of connections in the Georgia area, too. We felt like it was definitely a hotbed of talent, and there's a lot of young men. We talked to them and say, hey, do you want to stay in the Southeast down there, or do you want to come and play in the Pac-12 and see the mountains? So there's a few kids that want to do that for sure.
It seems to have worked for you. I mean, you've got guys on the roster now, obviously. This is about year 3 of you guys recruiting in Florida. Have you guys seen much of a difference in the inroads that you've been able to make down here in just the short time that you've been doing it?
Yeah, we're making some inroads, and we got 2 young men, Anthony Gilmissi and Johnny Huntley, and they both from the same high school there, and so we feel like we're making some inroads, and we hope to get some more guys from Florida this year.
Is there anything to that, or is it a little bit more overblown that the skill positions in Florida and the speed and all that? Is that just some kind of reputation that's developed, or is there really something to that?
No, there really is something to that. There's no doubt. There's a lot of speed and athleticism, and seems like to me the closer you get to water, the more speed there is. The farther away you get from water, the less speed there is.
Yeah, there's probably some scientific explanation to that. I'm not real sure what it is, but I'm sure it exists. You and I, the last time I think we spoke was you had just taken over there. I had just taken the job at Rivals. So we kind of came in. You came into Colorado when I came into Rivals. What's the biggest difference speaking to you now than the first time that we conversed when you first took over the job and the culture up there? And it seems like everything's kind of going in the right direction for you guys.
Yeah, we are going in the right direction. You always want it to go faster than it does, but it always takes time to build a foundation. We have a lot of great things going on here. Number one, facility-wise, we just moved into our $156 million football facility last August. So we've been in it 1 year now, a little over a year. And it's a tremendous facility, and that's helping us a lot in recruiting. And then, then our program's getting better and better. And, the Pac-12 is arguably there's always arguing who's better, SEC or Pac-12. And so it's a big-time conference with a lot of appeal. And of course, Boulder's been voted the number 1 college town in America many times, and it's beautiful, and we're only 20 miles from downtown Denver. So there's a lot to do here.
No, I've eaten at some places in Boulder. I think, is there a place called the Kitchen Sink there that serves up sandwiches? Is that correct?
There's a place called the Kitchen, and then there's a place called the Sink. So you've probably eaten at both of them. The Sink is a famous hamburger, pizza, where you sign the wall. It's really a neat area. And then there's a place called the Kitchen. It's really excellent food. It's down on Pearl Street. The Sink is up on the hill. It's been voted like I think the number 1 foodiest town in America. There's a lot of great eating places in Boulder.
When you went in and you hired Levitt and some of those other guys, did you do that with recruiting Florida in mind, or was that just kind of a bonus? And he's kind of a name. He was a head coach, a pretty celebrated head coach down here. Was that hired for that reason?
No, Jim, combination. Jim, I was hiring mainly just for the defensive coordinator spot, but I knew he had a lot of contacts in Florida. There's no doubt about that. When I hired Joe Tumpkin, he was for defense, but I knew he had a tremendous amount of contacts in the Miami area and the South Florida area, and I knew he would be able to do a great job recruiting there for us.
What have you kind of seen out of the two Florida kids that we discussed earlier, Huntley and Jewel Missy? I mean, did they come in and kind of turn heads right away, or where are they kind of at development-wise since they've been on campus?
Well, they're playing as true freshmen, and they can run. They're big. They're athletic. They're really going to be good players, and they're doing really well. They've played in both the first two games and are going to play key roles for us. They're really good athletes. We don't have a lot of freshmen playing, and they're two of the freshmen that are playing.
I got to ask you, going back to Levitt, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you that. I know that there are a lot of teams, including my alma mater, that there's always buzz around him as a guy that's going to be a head coach again. Have you fielded any inquiries in the last year about him? And if so, how's that gone for you?
No, didn't fill any inquiries on him, but I know he'd be a great head coach again. He's very passionate, very good at what he does. He did a phenomenal job at South Florida. They're building that program from scratch, and he would make a great head coach again. And I hope that happens for him. But right now he's doing a great job as a defensive coordinator for us.
So what's the next step for you guys' program? I mean, what kind of constitutes a successful season for Colorado in 2016? And what are you guys kind of looking for as far as measuring success?
Well, we're doing like everybody else does, and is we want to win the Pac-12 championship. We want to win the Pac-12 South, and we want to go to the Pac-12 championship game, and then see what happens from there. And that's what our young men are shooting for. That's what we believe, and we have a good football team, and we feel like we can, beat anybody we play. We just got to go do it. So we're hoping to have very good success this year.
What's kind of, I know you can't obviously talk about specific players, but are there needs that you're looking to fill in this class that you're out recruiting right now? Or is there some kind of need or some kind of area that you guys are really trying to focus on as far as filling bodies?
We have a lot of seniors in our senior class right now, so we're going to sign a full allotment of players, at least 25. And so we're looking for something at every position, really, to be honest with you, because we have a lot of guys graduating. So we're on every front. So it's not like last year we had a smaller class. We're kind of looking for certain things. This year we're signing a few guys at every position except for quarterback. We'll just sign one quarterback. But at the other position we'll sign a couple guys.
What did you guys really set out looking for last year when you said you were setting out looking for some things last year? And do you think you kind of filled it?
Yeah, we were looking for some receivers and DBs. We were also looking for some linebackers, and we felt like we did well there. And so those were kind of some areas that we were looking for last year.
I got to ask your opinion here on you've been around the Pac-12 now a couple times. I mean, you've been there for a while. What's kind of the most imposing road environment there that you go into that you guys have had to face?
Wow, on the road. I mean, I guess you'd have to say it's either. To me, it's either Oregon or Utah. It's so loud in their stadiums, the way their stadiums are built. Their stadium's built a lot like ours. Ours is voted the 7th hardest place in America to play. Altitude, and then it sits right on top of you. Our sidelines are so tight. So are Utah's and so are Oregon's. And it goes straight up, and you can just everything vibrates and stays in the stadium. So they're really hard stadiums to hear in as a visitor.
Oregon doesn't really surprise me. Utah takes me off guard a little bit. Is it really that loud in there? Do they fill that place up for home games?
Yeah, they fill it up every game, and it's really loud. Really loud.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't spent too much time in stadiums out there. I functions out of beat writers.
They have a thing they do for third downs. They keep a chart of it. It gets loud in there. It really does.
Hold on. What do you mean they keep a chart of it?
They keep a chart. Their student body is right there, and they keep a chart of, when they stop you on third down, they put up like strikeouts. They put up a third down, a number 3, a number 3, a number 3 type.
Oh, so it stays up there the whole season then?
They pack it every game, and it's loud. I think it holds, and I think the high 40s, but it goes straight up. I mean, it's right on top of you.
All right, we're going to do some non-football stuff before I let you get out of here, obviously. This is kind of fun stuff I like to do with some of the other coaches we've had on. What is on Coach MacIntyre's iPod right now? If you're going to queue up something to listen to, what's the last song you listen to?
Wow. The Newsboys and the song Guilty. I like that song.
What's the favorite movie in the world for you?
Wow. Favorite movie in the world. There's a lot. Oh, gosh. I guess I'm a Matt Damon fan. I like some of his movies.
You got to give me one in specific. I recently saw The Martian, which I thought was very good, but I mean, what else is?
Oh gosh, I've gone blank. What are the movies that he's like a spy guy?
The Bourne movies.
Yeah, all the Jason Bourne movies. Yes, I like the Jason Bourne movies. I went blank for a minute. Jason Bourne. Yes.
I have somehow avoided seeing those, and I don't know how. Although people sing their praises.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
All right, well, I appreciate you coming on. I didn't want to keep you longer than 10 minutes, so I know you're busy getting ready for the game this weekend. And, the next time I come out there, maybe we'll do the sync, and they'll hang a picture of me and you next to President Obama or whatever.
That'd be great. Well, let's do it. Come on out.
All right, what a scintillating conversation between very surprised Rob Cassidy and Coach MacIntyre. Now, Rob, he sort of sneak attacked you with that call, right?
Yeah, we had kind of discussed, or I discussed with the SID there a week before getting it done. And, I had no doubt that it would get done. I kind of have a relationship with MacIntyre, but, I didn't hear for a week. And then, I get a call. He's like, "Are you ready to do this now?" Yeah, I guess. So I was kind of blindsided by the whole thing. I didn't have anything in front of me. I did it standing up in my office. I was running out the door to go somewhere. It was, it wasn't great timing, but, he's great. I enjoy him, and I enjoy, the things he has to say. And, I think he's a relatively smart, insightful guy. So if that interview wasn't the best, it's on me, not on him.
Oh, that's on you, Coach. That's actually not Rob's. It's not on Coach. It's on Rob, who is not a coach, even though several children call him that on a weekly basis. Time for our tweet of the week.
Don't stop tweeting me, you man, you chicken.
I know this is one that caught all of our eyes. Definitely something near and dear to our heart. Rob, why don't you go ahead and give us a rundown, if you got it pulled up in front of you, Matt Leinart, this week's winner. What did he have to say?
He tweeted that the last time that he was in Norman, he was going there to do the Ohio State game, obviously, and he tweeted that the last time he was there was for his official visit where they treated him to Applebee's. No wonder he didn't sign there, right?
Yeah, I went to the exact wording, headed to Norman tomorrow. Haven't been back since I was treated to Applebee's on my recruiting trip in 2000. And boy, did it blow up. I see it got almost 1,000 retweets, 1,500 likes. And boy, we all know when you go to a new city, you're traveling, you got to go to a real restaurant. Don't go to Applebee's. Don't take a recruit to Applebee's. What are you doing?
And also, I think the reason that it blew up, besides it just being a hilariously bad recruiting technique, is, boy, you want to play into Oklahoma stereotypes. I mean, is there anything more, Midwestern than, a recruiting dinner at Applebee's? Let's take you somewhere nice like an Applebee's.
I was famously at a wedding a couple years ago in Ohio, and the groom was from Oregon, and his family was setting up the rehearsal dinner, and the wedding was taking place at a country club, very fancy wedding, and they had said, we were going to have it at the club, but we saw that there's this really nice restaurant down the street. It's called P.F. Chang's. So,
oh no!
Make sure you wear something nice.
I get two things I can add to this Leinart tweet. One, our Kerry Murdoch, who covers Oklahoma for us over at Soonerscoop.com, says that, not in jest, after that was an era that happened where they were taking recruits to Applebee's. And then there was I talked to him about this. There was apparently a year period after that where they upgraded to Outback Steakhouse. And that's not a joke. That's a thing that actually happened. So they moved up in the world. Apparently they're not doing that anymore, obviously. But I mean, they really upgraded to the Outback Steakhouse for a year.
I believe Jacob. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, a lot of people don't know this about me. My first job ever was a server at Applebee's. And after a 4-year stint there, believe it or not, my next job, while part-timing at the Naples Daily News, was a server at P.F. Chang's. So I really hit on both those restaurants that Rob just mentioned. And I got news for you. If college coaches came in with a recruit that they were trying to impress and got me as their server, that guy, 10 years after his football career was over, would definitely be tweeting some disparaging words about the restaurant that he ate. No question about it.
I thought you were going to say you would have hooked him up with, alcohol for underage or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Nope.
I let it be known.
No, sorry. You play by
the rules. There were no hookups on my watch.
So while I was making fun of this whole situation on Twitter the other day, Applebee's followed me. So now I'm one of the people in the world that is now followed on Twitter by Applebee's, which I think probably makes me want to delete my Twitter.
I used to have a fair amount of stock in Applebee's, coincidentally, and then IHOP bought them, and then they liquidated all the Applebee's stock, and I got a nice little check.
I actually
for like $200 or something.
talk about some cash. I actually had a chance, we do know that several people on the rival staff frequent Applebee's when they're on the road, so we can't disparage it too much. And I know,
Yeah, a man on this staff made me eat at a Buffalo Wild Wings, and I won't name names, in New Orleans, which might be this is like a country's greatest food city outside of New York, and I was forced to eat at a Buffalo Wild Wings once in New Orleans. It was miserable.
well, Cal famously took Demetrius Robertson and his family to Buffalo Wild Wings when they came for their in-home visit. So don't.
Well, Buffalo Wild Wings is great because
No,
it's
it's
two
not.
meals for the price of one. You taste it coming back up too.
Jeez, we're gonna get in so much trouble for this. I already got in trouble for
There
making.
goes our sponsorship.
Yeah, I got in trouble for making fun of Frontier Airlines
Hey,
on.
well, if anybody from Buffalo Wild Wings is listening to this is all a joke and sarcastic, and it's one of these millennial ironic things that you don't understand. We really love Buffalo Wild Wings, and we eat there every day. So you should sponsor our podcast.
and we call it BW3s also. So let's move on to this week's game of the week. Last week we had Ohio State as a 2-point favorite at Oklahoma. I think we can all say they covered pretty comfortably that game. This week we have Arkansas and Texas A&M playing an allegedly neutral site game at Jerry's World there at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington. And guess what? Texas A&M, a 6-point favorite. So this is in the old Vegas zone, I believe, as Bill Simmons calls it. Tough to pick here because of the point spread. What do you think, boys? What do we got on this one?
Give me the road. Well, neutral site. Give me the road underdog, man. I'll take the Hogs. I'll take the Razorbacks and my man Brett Bielema. Not only do I think they cover that, I think they win outright.
Wow, Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, I pick Arkansas to at least cover as well. I'm fascinated by them. I haven't watched a ton of Arkansas football. I did watch their game against TCU, and the way that they really just got into the fiber of whatever TCU was trying to do on offense, just slowed them down, made them miserable, and just played a tidy game offensively themselves. Makes me think that they're a fascinating choice, not just for this game, but as an SEC contender this year as well.
Yeah, well, you guys didn't watch Arkansas's first game where they stunk and they should have lost. So guess what? We're going all in with the old Aggies.
Oh man!
Despite the American Horror Story threats we received from them last year, I'm taking the Aggies and I'm taking the 6 points. And Trevor Knight and company, Speedy Noel have his Rolex on, and we're going to roll right in there to Arlington and get the victory.
Hey, before we move on from the subject, let me ask you this. Let me ask you guys both this. What is broken with this spread? Am I missing something as far as Florida State -6 against USF? Boy, you want to talk about the Rob Cassidy Stone Cold Lock of the Week. I don't understand that.
Well, hey, have you heard of a little man named Quentin Flowers? Because he is the star for USF, and we saw them have a problem with the running quarterback last week. So you never know; he might give them some issues.
We'll see. I mean, let's see. Feel free to play this audio back about the Stone Cold Lock of the Week next week when they lose.
Well, I would also take Florida State -6 in that game, despite several friends of the podcast being members of the USF football team from mine and Nick's days down covering football in Southwest Florida. All right, now it's time for the segment everyone's been waiting for. I know several people tell me they just skip ahead to this part in the show. So, it's time for Rants and Recommendations. Boy, Rob, you were on the road this weekend. We floated around a couple segments, ideas, stories from the road and stuff like that. So we'll kind of roll that into this segment this week. You were in Louisiana, which, by the way, someone's texting me right now complaining you didn't let them know that you were going to be there in Louisiana.
Who, Jimmy? Who was I supposed to? Oh.
No. Well, you can't say it on the podcast. Nick will have to edit that out.
I'll bleep it.
Yeah, bleep it. So you were staying at a Marriott chain, of course, hotel, but Marriott's expanded into some type of niche market, I guess.
Yeah. They buy out boutique hotels, which for the most part are very good. And I won't name names on this because I do enjoy Marriott. I'm a very loyal customer, a platinum member. If Marriott wants to sponsor this podcast, by all means. But the place that I stayed was like if they held a millennial focus group. And they just like took everything. I mean, I walked into this place. All right, first of all, there's no check-in desk at this place. You check in at the bar. You get a free drink when you check in, which I could obviously not cash in on because I was working that night. But the walls are decorated with hashtags. There's Cards Against Humanity on every table in the lobby. Giant Jenga in the lobby. There was a pillow in my room that said "Treat Yourself" on my bed. It was really, really cringeworthy, man, because it's like one of these things where it's like, who doesn't see through this? Like, it was so bad. It was trying so hard. The video boards in the lobby were also just streams of the Instagram feed where if anybody hashtagged the hotel name, that Instagram pictures would come up because millennials love Instagram too, right? There were signs in the workout room that had kettlebells that said "Grab Life by the Bells." There was a out of order sign on. Now this is maybe the best part. There was an out of order sign on one of the exercise bikes that said something like, instead of saying, this is broken or whatever, it said something like, "Yo, bro, it's my day off. Your quads will thank you." Jesus Christ. Man, if Womack would have been in this place, he might have set it on fire. And that's not an exaggeration, because I don't get as angry as easily as Woody does about these things. I was upset enough to call Woody and complain for 20 minutes. He would have lit the place on fire.
Oh, well, to be fair, you tried to complain to me for 20 minutes, and I got so mad I didn't want to talk to you anymore. I was ready to get off the phone because I didn't want to hear about it. It made me so mad. I mean, I'm with you. It's like, but I would never stay at such a boutique hotel. I know Marriott, I actually saw that they recently completed their merger with Starwood or whatever. So, boy, there should be plenty more options for you Marriott loyalists out there, so you won't have to stay at these type of places.
Oh, also by the desk, like where I forgot to point this out too, like where you would normally go, like the business center where you go to like print things out or whatever. There was a sign over the computer that said #work.
Oh my gosh. All right. And everyone's already shut off the podcast now because they hate this place so much. Now, this rolls into my rant, which I believe you said there was Cards Against Humanity available in the lobby.
Every table on the bar had a set on there. Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Cards Against Humanity has been so played out for like 5 years. It's not funny. It's a game for people who aren't funny to play when they have nothing to say to each other, okay?
No, I agree.
I think it was 2 years ago when I swore off I would never play the game again. When I went to some place and played it, and it was so boring. First of all, it's just Mad Libs, people. It's not that creative of a game. Number two, you can cuss. We're adults. You're allowed to cuss. You don't have to have a card game to let you, say cuss words. So, I'm so mad now. I can't even I can't.
Well, that's okay. You complain about, I don't know if you realize or not, but you complain about this every 3 weeks or so, every 4 weeks. So,
well,
this is like the happy anniversary to this rant.
I complain about it. The problem is, my whole life is a real life segment of just rants, no recommendations. So you guys have heard me complain about it several times.
I brought this one out in him because I called him complaining about the hotel, and the first thing I think I told him, because I knew it would push a Womack button, was about the Cards Against Humanity. But there were probably 6 sets on 6 different tables. Nobody was playing it, but they were there.
All right. You have a complaint, Nick. I see you wrote something down.
Yeah. This is I'll keep it brief because a lot of this goes without saying. Yeah, this past weekend I was on the road. It was a big travel weekend for me. I was in Denton and then Houston the following day, so I spent a lot of time in the car. I actually brought my lovely wife with me on this trip, so there was a lot of podcast listening in the car rides. And there's one that she's taken a liking to that we listen to. She's a big NPR fan, as I know Rob Cassidy is as well. And there's a podcast called Modern Love that we were listening to, and it has sometimes cutesy, sometimes sad stories. Yeah. My complaint isn't with the podcast so much, but just the like, listen, we get into a situation and it's like NPR has an author come on to talk about a book, and it's like they write a book, they write an essay or whatever. Then so this Modern Love podcast has an actor or actress do the reading of the essay, which is, I guess, kind of cool. Then they have the author come on and then just really just meticulously break down every single, like, this is the emotion we were trying to evoke here. This is the point we were trying to make here. And it's just like, these authors come on there and they just think they're the bee's knees with, their cleverness with what they were trying to do. And it's like, you know what, guys, let your work speak for itself and have that be the end of it. And NPR too shame for, trying to, just turn a 15-minute podcast into 45 minutes because we have to read everything 3 times over to get the picture.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I noticed there's a lot of these podcasts, and I know Rob's a big fan of the NPR ones where you feel like you should be listening to it because it seems like a clever premise or whatever, and then you're listening to it and you're really actually bored, but you keep listening for whatever reason. And I think that might be a case of that one. I actually have a podcast I like, which is, it was a little boring at first to get into. I would highly recommend it. Revisionist History with Malcolm Gladwell. I don't think it's related to NPR, but it's the same type of shtick. Malcolm Gladwell is a famous author, but he talks. There's a little sports talk mixed in there, and some interesting stuff that I think people would enjoy. I enjoyed listening to the series. I recently finished it up, so you can find that on iTunes as well. Rob, what do you say?
Yeah, you should. I recently started following We Rate Dogs on Twitter, which you can find at @dog_rates, kind of like my Twitter handle, which is Cassidy @_Rob. Ring the bell for that plug. Anyway, the best part about this thing is it's pictures of cute dogs, and every dog is rated either an 11 or a 12 on a 10 scale because they're all good dogs, Woody. All of them. There's no reason to take a jab at any of them. But if you'd like to spruce up your Twitter feed with some pictures of some adorable canines, I would, and some pretty funny captions at times, I would recommend following @dog_rates. They're all good dogs.
Yeah, well, so wait, are all the dogs rated 10s then?
No, not 10s, 11s and 12s out of 10.
Oh my God. No, I hate this. I recently, man, I have a major, guess what? It's a bonus rant. Ding, 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 ding. I cannot interact with humans with dogs anymore. I take my dog out and everyone's like, my dog's not good with other dogs. It's like, you're a spaz. The dog is fine. You're the problem. If guess what? If you're listening to this podcast and your dog is not good with other dogs, it's you. You're not good with other people, and you're not good with other dogs. It's time to take a look in the mirror.
Here's my bonus rant. Everybody in Austin, Texas owns a dog except for us. And we can't go, we like to go out for walks in the morning, in the afternoon, wherever. We can't go for a walk anywhere without sidestepping dog poop. Everywhere. Nobody cleans up after their dogs, and every single person has a dog. It's all over the place.
Hey, let's not take this out on the dogs though, because they're good dogs. They're all good dogs.
No, they're not. It's all the
owners
dogs.
That are bad. They're all good dogs.
Guess what? I've encountered some bad dogs in my day, namely Charlie. Shots fired at you, Charlie.
Wait a minute. This is coming from a guy whose dog killed a family member's cat, right?
Well, no, they're still under investigation. Okay, there's never been he's never been convicted. Yeah, we settled out of court in a civil suit. So there's never been a wrongful death case. He's never been convicted. So don't besmirch the name.
Per this Twitter account, not every dog is an 11 or a 12 out of 10. Yeah. I don't care what that Twitter account has to say.
Because they're all good dogs.
All right. Well, this is a bad podcast, so we better wrap it up. I did forget to promote everything at the beginning of the show. No one's listening anymore now, so I guess we'll just wait till next week to do it. Big shout to M. Deuce for providing us with our music. And please at least subscribe on iTunes. Leave us a review. Our numbers are up considerably. We hope to keep them going up so we can get a couple sponsorships. I need some of that Blue Apron. I need some stamps.com coming in here, so we just gave them 2 free shout outs. So
Buffalo Wild Wings, if you're still listening, we still want you. I'm sorry for everything we said.
No, I don't want you. You can keep it. You can keep your dirty money. That's it for this week. We'll be back with another show hopefully next Wednesday.